heard a lot of thunder, but I did not see any rain. But still, beautiful morning outside. It's fantastic. We are in Hebrews 12, and another word of encouragement for you as we look at the thoughts following this great list of men and women of faith. And it's good for us to remember that there are many, many people of faith all around our city and all around all the cities of the whole world now. Real faith, real people who believe and love Jesus and are servants and humble, and they really are like that. They've become that. And sometimes we forget that because that's not what gets pushed at us or what we see with our eyes. We see so much the opposite of worldly people who are self-centered. But this conclusion tells us how we should run in spite of the fact that sometimes we're surrounded by ungodly people, not to forget that there are godly people everywhere. And some of them might be right next door to you. And our calling is to be that neighbor or that person in my family or that person at work who becomes this witness of faith in their lives. And so the encouragement here is to kind of like join in the march. We've read all about Moses and Abraham and all of the men and women of faith. Now just join in. And here's what he says. This is Hebrews chapter 12, the first couple of verses again. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. And the message today is to remind you once again how much we need each other, how much we need to know that there are men and women of faith all over the place. And since we're surrounded by men and women of faith, let's consider them in our lives rather than the people who are not of faith, who are divisive and self-centered, and they just don't seem to have an interest or a care for other people. But that doesn't allow us to withdraw from it or to become it. No, we're becoming a witness of faith. And so I get to be a witness of faith for you and you for me and for others and for my family, for my church. I get to be a witness of faith. And that means that as a witness of faith, I throw off, get rid of the things that might tangle me up and stop me from running. And then what I replace that with is a fixing. And I know these two words go together, throw off and fix your eyes, because their language there is to do this daily, to every day throw off the sin that entangles and fix your eyes on Jesus. Get focused on the target that's ahead of you, and that's Christ. And the amazing thing that the writer does, and not just this writer, but all of the writers, they say that when we fix our eyes on Jesus, we have to remember that he became humble and obedient even unto death. And so our fixing of our eyes on humility and obedience is a never-ending journey. He calls it running a race. Let us run. And it's not just any race, it's a marathon race. That's the language that he's using. It's not a sprint. It's not, I wake up today and I'm going to do it. No, I'm going to wake up today, I'm going to wake up tomorrow, I'm going to wake up the next day, I'm going to wake up the next day, and what am I going to do? I'm going to throw off the things that would hold me back from spiritual growth, and I'm going to fix my eyes on Jesus. I'm going to look to Jesus for what I am becoming. And that is what I'm doing, and that is what the encouraging thing is. That is what every Christian is doing. That's what we're all doing. We're all throwing off the things that would take us to ungodliness, and we're putting on, like putting on clothing, like we're put on. We're fixing our eyes on Jesus, and He is the one who shows us how to live, how to love, how to sacrifice, how to be obedient, how to be a servant, and really even how to have conversations with people who who don't love Him, who don't care about Him. Most of His conversations with them are okay. Some of them are difficult to hear. John the Baptist calls them brood of vipers. Jesus calls them whitewashed tombs. It's fascinating. But He never really changes them. He changes those who want to be changed. And if you're here today and you're hearing this for the first time, that's our part in this. We have to want to. And I pray that you want to learn what is it that I need to get rid of? What is it that tangles me up? A friend of mine recently had a conversation with me about something that I had said, which I thought was like great, positive thing to say, like, I'm going to go do something about this. And so he had a conversation with me that was difficult at first to hear, but then as I worked my way through it, I realized he was right. I needed to rethink how I said that, because in saying things sometimes the way that I say them, or in thinking sometimes the way that we think, we limit God in what we can become. We end up becoming what we want to become, and kind of a soul made in my own image. And I really had to humble myself and publicly say that wasn't really what God wanted me to do or to say. I need to go at this a different way. And he came back to me and he apologized for reprimanding me like that. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm not like other people that you know. I want to be corrected. I want to know what needs to be thrown off. And sometimes I can't see it. And I need help. I think we're all like that. And, when people correct you, do you dismiss them? Is it their fault? And, we're so accustomed to being treated that way that we almost never really say anything anymore to anybody when we know that what they're doing is ungodly. We just let them go. And that's not fair. That's not what God wants us to do. He wants us to be corrected, but he wants us also to be an instrument of correction for other spiritual people who are trying to grow in faith. And we have that responsibility to help each other like that. So I actually told him that I long for it, I yearn for it. I don't have very many people who are confident enough in our relationship that they will do that with me. But I'm glad I have at least a few who do, or who knows what I would become, because I would only become what I see. And a lot of times that's not what God wants me to become. So I want to encourage you to throw off the sins that entangle. Be teachable. Be someone who needs to learn and wants to learn and desires to please God by doing what God wants him to do or her to do. And that means correction with one another. And we set our target as Jesus. He's the author of faith. He's the one who can show us how to do this. And you know as well as I do that when it came right down to his purpose, he came to give his life away on the cross. There was a moment in time where he did not want to do that. He wanted out. But we have to we have to discard the desire not to become, or the desire to become what we want, and embrace what is it that God wants of us, and embrace that in our lives, and then run the race toward it, run the marathon toward it. Wake up every day and say, I am going to become an obedient servant. I'm going to become an obedient servant. I am becoming an obedient servant. And then God will bless that. For the joy that is set before him, he endured the cross. He bore up against the very thing that he didn't want to face. He went through it, and then God seated him at the right hand of the throne of grace. And so for you and I, the path of humble obedience, this marathon, has a place for us. It leads us to everlasting life. So don't bemoan it. I know sometimes it's hard. It is. But don't bemoan it. Relish it. Run after it. Okay? And when you run after it, trust that God's going to reward your obedience. And I hope and I pray that you become aware of the next thing that needs to be thrown aside in your life. That's a good thing for you to be aware of it. It's a better thing to actually throw it aside and to move on to what God wants you to become. So I encourage you in that. You become what God wants you to become. You are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, other people who are trying to do exactly the same thing. God bless you, and y'all have a great, great